Hey everyone, welcome to this quick exam revision explainer on the theory of consumer behavior. Look, I know exams are right around the corner, and honestly, you just need to get these concepts locked down fast, right? I absolutely love doing these rapid-fire reviews because they really do make a huge difference in your scores. So let's not waste any time, let's get straight into it and make sure you walk into that exam room completely prepared.
Okay, let's kick things off with a super simple question. Mangoes or bananas? Imagine you're standing right in front of a fruit stall. Your mouth is watering for both, but there's a catch. You only have a really limited amount of pocket money. So, how do you decide what to actually buy? Well, in economics, we call this the problem of choice. Naturally, every consumer wants the combination of goods that gives them the absolute maximum satisfaction. But our likes and our budgets, they kind of limit us. And really, this entire chapter is just about the frameworks economists use to solve that exact problem.
So, here's our game plan for today's explainer. We're going to conquer 5 key areas. First up, utility, then indifference. Third, budgets. Fourth, demand. And finally, we'll wrap up with a quick recap and my top exam tips. Stick with me, and I promise this chapter is going to feel like an absolute breeze.
All right, Section 1, Utility and Measuring Your Satisfaction. We all know what it feels like to be happy after buying something, but economists actually have a specific way to quantify and measure that feeling.
Now pay super close attention here because you will absolutely see these two terms on your test. First up is utility. Simply put, it's a commodity's want satisfying capacity. Like, how much do you really need it? The stronger your desire, the greater the utility you get. But here is the major exam favorite, marginal utility, or MU. This is the change in your total utility from consuming just one additional unit of a good. Seriously, remember that phrase for your definitions, one additional unit.
Let's actually see how marginal utility works in action with some data. Imagine you're eating bananas. As you eat 1, then 2, then 3, your total utility, meaning your total satisfaction, goes up. It goes from 12 to 18, then 22. But look really closely at the marginal utility column. The extra happiness you get from each additional banana, it's actually dropping. It goes from 12 down to 6, then 4. And by the time you eat that 5th banana, it hits exactly 0. And if you force down a 6th banana, boom, it's -2. You're literally less happy.
So, what's the big takeaway? It's summarized right here. The law of diminishing marginal utility. This is a massive, fundamental rule in consumer behavior. It basically tells us that as you get more and more of a commodity, your desire to have even more of it just gets weaker. Your MU diminishes with an increase in consumption. And please, absolutely commit this third point to memory for your exam. When marginal utility reaches exactly 0, total utility is at its absolute maximum. That is a guaranteed 1-mark or multiple-choice question, for sure.
Moving right along to Section 2, Indifference and Ordinal Utility. We've talked about measuring utility with exact numbers. That's cardinal utility. But now we're shifting gears to simply ranking our preferences instead of counting them.
So imagine a graph plotting bananas on one axis and mangoes on the other. An indifference curve is simply a curve joining all the points that represent different bundles of goods where the consumer is completely indifferent. And why are they indifferent? Well, because every single point on that specific curve gives the exact same level of satisfaction or equal utility. You honestly don't care if you get bundle A or bundle B because they both make you equally happy.
Let's check out this data to understand a concept called the marginal rate of substitution, or MRS. I know, it sounds super complicated, but it literally just asks, how many mangoes are you willing to sacrifice to get just one more banana? To go from combination A to B, you give up 3 mangoes to get 1 additional banana. That's a 3-to-1 ratio. But notice how, as you get more bananas, you're willing to give up fewer and fewer mangoes. It drops to 2-to-1, then 1-to-1. This shows the law of diminishing marginal rate of substitution in action, and that right there is exactly what gives the indifference curve its unique shape.
Now you might see the term monotonic preferences on your exam paper. Do not let that textbook jargon freak you out. Let's understand this simply. Monotonic preferences just means more is always better. If a rational consumer is given a choice between 2 bundles and one has more of at least one good and no less of the other, they're going to pick the bigger bundle. It's honestly just common sense wrapped in a fancy economics term.
All right, on to Section 3. We've spent time daydreaming about what we want and what makes us happy, but now let's talk reality. Let's talk about budgets and finding your optimal choice.
There's a subtle but really important difference between a budget set and a budget line.
Your budget set includes all the available bundles of goods that you can possibly afford with your given income at current market prices. It's the whole collection of what you can buy. But the budget line, that represents only the bundles that cost exactly your entire income. If you spend every last penny in your pocket, you are right on the budget line. And remember, because buying more of one good means you have to buy less of another, this budget line always slopes downward.
So where does the magic actually happen? The consumer's optimal choice. A rational consumer obviously wants the best bundle they can get based on their tastes, but it absolutely must be affordable. It has to be inside their budget set. So the optimum choice is found exactly at the point where the budget line is perfectly tangent to an indifference curve. That point of tangency is where your highest possible satisfaction perfectly matches your exact budget. Draw this tangency point clearly in your exam, and I promise your examiner will love you for it.
Okay, let's hit our fourth and final major topic, demand. We know how a single optimal choice is made, but what happens to your choices in the market when the prices of those goods suddenly change?
Let's keep this as simple as possible. The law of demand states that there's a negative relationship between the price of a commodity and the quantity demanded. Basically, when prices go up, your demand goes down. And because of this inverse relationship, when you plot it on a graph, the demand curve is always going to slope downwards.
Now let's compare two types of goods that manage to trick students every single year: normal goods versus inferior goods. For a normal good, when your income goes up, your demand for it goes up. Think of, buying nicer clothes or eating at better restaurants when you get a raise. But for an inferior good, when your income goes up, your demand actually goes down. Why? Because now you can afford better quality alternatives. Keep this visual comparison in your head so you don't confuse the two on test day.
Next up, another classic exam comparison: substitutes versus complements. This is all about how demand changes based on the price of a related good. Substitutes are goods you use instead of each other, like tea and coffee. If the price of coffee suddenly shoots up, people shift over to tea, so the demand for tea rises. Complements, on the other hand, are consumed together, like tea and sugar. If sugar becomes crazy expensive, you might just drink less tea overall, so the demand for tea actually falls.
Okay, major exam alert here. Listen closely, because you absolutely need to know the difference between a movement along the demand curve and a complete shift of the demand curve. A movement along the curve is caused by one thing, and one thing only: a change in the price of the good itself. That's it. But a shift of the entire curve, that happens when other things change, like your income, your preferences, or the prices of those related goods we just talked about. So remember, price changes equal movement, everything else equals a shift.
Wow, we have covered a massive amount of ground really quickly. Let's move into our final section, the recap and exam tips, just to lock all this knowledge in and boost your confidence.
If you remember literally nothing else from this explainer, use these 4 points as your ultimate mental checklist. Number 1, marginal utility diminishes as consumption increases, and total utility is highest when MU is 0. Number 2, indifference curves represent bundles that give a consumer equal satisfaction. Number 3, the optimum choice happens exactly where the budget line is tangent to the indifference curve. And number 4, the demand curve slopes downward because of that negative relationship between price and quantity demanded.
And just like that, you are completely ready to revise this chapter quickly and effectively. My biggest tip for you right now: grab a piece of blank paper and physically practice drawing those graphs, especially that budget line tangency and the demand curve shifts. Walk into that exam room with total confidence because you absolutely have got this. But hey, before you go, I want to leave you with a quick thought. The very next time you spend your pocket money on a snack, ask yourself, are you subconsciously calculating your diminishing marginal utility to find your optimal choice? Thanks for learning with me today on this explainer. Good luck on those exams. You're gonna crush them.